Greetings Autobots and welcome to another ASMR review, or maybe not so much a review as this video is a gaming focused ramble of my personal favourite games of my PSP collection. And I decided to take the time to do this video because the PSP, this little doohickey here, is one of my favourite gaming handhelds and has so many great games on it. Like from across all of its years, it's had some fantastic games. So I've decided to pick the top 10 in no particular order from my collection, my rather extensive PSP library. But we're going to be taking a look at 10 of these games, and I'm going to go into a little bit about the game itself and my personal takes and experience with the game. So, without further ado, let's get started with the first game. Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie. Now, this game was released back in 2005. PSP was there since, I think it was 2004 it first came out, back when Spider-Man 2 was making the rounds. But this game is superb. It's based on the movie, the same name, Peter Jackson's King Kong, and is a first-person shooter and third-person brawler game where you play as Jack Driscoll, the main character, the writer, and Kong himself. So take a look at the spine. Here it is, PSP with that lovely old-school PlayStation logo. That's the one thing I love. I love the thing about the PSP as well, how the logo looked so future tech. You know, this console was really ahead of its time. Like truly, the PSP was just a fantastic little system. But here you have Peter Jackson's King Kong, official game of the movie, UMD format. Flip around to the back. Play as man, play as Kong. Embark on an epic adventure created in collaboration with Academy Award-winning director Peter Jackson and based on the Universal Pictures film. Survive as Jack in a world crawling with predators and live the legend as Kong. So this game, as I said before, is a first-person shooter. You'll be playing as Jack for the majority of the game, and you'll be using stuff like traps and using live prey as bait to bait away bigger animals, and you'll be fighting stuff like dinosaurs, giant crabs, and the V-Rexes. Oh, the V-Rexes are such a superb sequence when you get to run from them and you have to kill the bats to get its attention. Oh, brilliant. Love this little game. But the other side of the coin, we have the Kong gameplay. Now, if you played something like, I would say God of War, but it's a lot more, it's not as combo-centric as God of War is. God of War is very fast and frenetic, but this one's a lot more punchy. You know, Kong, it's a lot more aggressive, that kind of combat. But this game I've played countless times and stands as one of the personal favourites in my collection, and a game I will gladly replay many times over because this version actually has some content. Namely, the console version is way longer. It's like 40 levels, but this one only has like 20, so roughly. So it's a lot shorter, but it doesn't cut out on the really good levels. It cuts out some that I would have wanted in, but overall, this game's superb. Like, you can't go wrong with King Kong. It's one of the personal favourites in my collection. So, let's move on to the next game. And I can already tell from the top, this is one of my other favourites. Well, this whole list is favourites. Infected. Now, Infected is a third-person shooter game which takes place in a zombie-infested New York during Christmas time, and you play as Special Agent Stevens, the first name of the character you get to put in yourself. So I just called him my real name then, Stevens. I'll probably make another file call him Autobot Stevens. Yeah, it's not alien at all, but you can see here the game is 15 because it's a lot more gory than King Kong. It's a lot more edgy. It features a soundtrack featuring Slipknot, El Nino, Chimera, and more. It has a pretty banging soundtrack, if I do say so myself. But here we take a look at the back. It says, infect the world through wireless victories. A mutant virus is turning New Yorkers into flesh-hungry zombies. In a gore-soaked campaign mode, you will save New York from the infected. In 4 brutal multiplayer modes, you will infect your opponents with your customized comp. Play 8-player games in ad hoc mode or infect the world in 2-player internet death matches. Track your infection online as you spread it around the world. So this game is a very arcadey sort of sense of style. You know, you get your weapons, and the way it works is the game has a dual weapon system. You have ballistic weapons like your pistol, shotgun, MP5, RPG, BMFG, and then you have your viral gun. And the way the viral gun works is on the left hand of your cop, it channels his blood, and his blood is immune to the infected, which causes the infected to explode like in the viscous gory chunks. Oh, it's so cool. Love this game. It's one of those games that definitely encourages you to replay it multiple times to get all the upgrades and to get the best medals, because you're ranked at the end based on how well you've done. But this game, a lot of people don't really talk about some of these PSP games, and I feel like maybe it's my due diligence to give this game the fair credit it is, because I personally think this is a solid game that's definitely worth your time if you're a PSP fan, or if you're a zombie game fan, or if you're just looking for a fast, frantic, nuts to butts shooter for your collection. I'd say Infected, can't go wrong. So we'll just pop that off to the side here, and our next game, Ratchet and Clank Size Matters. So I personally am a huge Ratchet and Clank fan. I own every single game, and this was actually my first Ratchet game. Now, depending on who you ask, that's either a good thing or a bad thing. But I'm here to say, while this game gets a lot of flack in the fandom, and not just that, but the wider gaming landscape, this game, it's not bad. It's not terrible, but it's not on the same level of quality as the other Ratchet games. But I personally get a really good kick out of it, and I've played it multiple times. You can see some nice cover art there. I always find it funny how they use the shirtless Ratchet from the original games. It's like they really want to get back to basics by having shirtless Ratchet. But we take a look at the back. Tiny enemies, big trouble. Wield massive weapons, discover new worlds, and shrink ray yourself down to size to explore the mysterious Technomite universe, and even journey through Clank's robo-head. There he is there. There's the man himself. Clank returns as a playable character. Challenge up to 4 friends in explosive multiplayer action. Now, I've never played the multiplayer for this game, but I've beaten the main campaign, I'd say, 3 times. Like, it's not a bad game, but it suffers from having a story that it's okay. I mean, it doesn't really go anywhere, and it just kind of feels like they're playing it more for laughs than to actually tell a story. And the enemies become really spongy, and the final boss, I remember despising the final boss the first time I played the game. I was like, God almighty, what have you done? I was going to blame Insomniac, but it's High Impact Games, because Insomniac didn't make this game. They had not lost the rights, but I think they just, I don't know, signed off to others to do. But Size Matters is just one of those games that it's like you either love it or you hate it. Me personally, I think it's okay. Not a bad game, but I mean, it's in my favourite PSP games, so I guess I see something in it that not a lot of other folks do. But who knows, maybe I'll play these games at some point in future videos when I get a good enough setup. But next up we have Mortal Kombat Unchained. Now, Mortal Kombat is a series I adore. I remember years ago, one of my friends from my old school, he could not stand the fatalities. I'd watch them on my iPad in school, and he would always sit there going like, oh my god, what, that's boggin', that's rank, like, why are you watching that? It was so funny. He cracked me up. He's a good lad. But we can see here, the back of the box says, it will consume you. Features 6 additional fighters, including Kitana, Jax, Frost, Blaze, Goro, and Shao Kahn. Battle your way to the top in all new endurance mode. Multiple fatalities, Harakiri's, interactive multi-tier backgrounds, including brutal death traps. That's what I loved about this game. This was a port of Mortal Kombat Deception for PS2, but it was pretty much the same game, but just scaled down for PlayStation Portable with puzzle combat and chess combat. But one thing I loved about this game was how the environments were actually more 3D, so you could move not just back and forward, but sort of rotate the map a bit, and that led to cool stage fatalities where, there was one in particular where I think it's it's either the Sky Temple or Bo Right Cho's dojo, and you could kick your opponent off the roof and then they'd fall down to the lower levels of the dojo. But then if you went a bit further and kicked them off the edge of the dojo, they'll fall and then splat right into a big pit full of spikes for a gory finisher. And just stuff like that makes these midway Mortal Kombat games, just separates them from the newer ones. The newer ones are good, don't get me wrong, the newer ones are good, but I think these ones have very interesting mechanics that they just didn't really capitalize on the newer games. But Mortal Kombat Unchained is a game I've not played too much, but I really enjoyed my time with it. I'm not the best at chaining together combos, though I'll always find time to practice this Scorpion. Scorpion's my main across pretty much all Mortal Kombat games. Some people may call that basic or milquetoast. I call it awesome because, in my opinion, Scorpion is one of the coolest fictional characters ever put to games. Especially when you land that spear attack against that one player who's just jumping around like a big nincompoop, and then you just stick that chain out and pull him over. Get over here! Oh, so cool. But yeah, this is the first 18 games, so that's how you know we're crossing into the big boy games category, folks. Right, next game. Now, this one could be a bit controversial. Transformers, the game. Now, I have a lot of memories with the DS version of this game, the Autobots and Decepticons version, but I never played the console and PSP versions. And the PSP version is a somewhat, I wouldn't say dumbed down, but it's a stripped down version. It's more of its own game compared to the console one, but come to back, it says protect or destroy. Play beyond the blockbuster movie and control the epic battle between Autobots and Decepticons. Change form anytime, any place. Fully interactive and destructible environments. Fly, drive, fight, and shoot with over 20 playable Transformers. I figured it'd be best read in an Optimus voice. Why not? Dare I say, why not? But you have some really cool art here of Barricade and Bumblebee just fighting, duking out in the city. And this game, this version in particular, is more of a sort of level-based third-person shooter. It's a little bit slower and stiffer than other games, but I personally, honestly enjoyed my time with it. It's not perfect. It's not the best Transformers game, far from it. But for its own game, honestly, you could do a lot worse, because I got a lot of these games secondhand for cheap, so, when you get a game for £1, you really can't be too harsh on it, all things considered. I can still criticize it, but I still enjoyed it. But the console version of this game, now that's a whole other beast. I'm telling you, that is one of my favourite movie games, but I'll save that for another video. But before I move on to the next game, I just want to have a little rattle on about this box art, because growing up, this was my Transformers, the Bayverse, the Michael Bay movies, Optimus and Megatron. I would see this all the time in game. They had this big poster with all the copies of the game across all different types when the movie was making the rounds. I remember going into the shop, I would look at the cover, and the Xbox version right below this part, or above it, it had a frame by frame of Bumblebee transforming, and I remember looking at it thinking, wow, why did they do that? Like, it's incredible, truly. The fact that they were able to get that in the game and make it so that it was a fast and fluid transformation on the fly. You just press a button, you're a robot, press a button, you're in vehicle mode. It's incredible. But with that, on to the next game. Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. Now, this game I'd say is an improvement over Transformers the game, because it is a top-down isometric, or it's a top-down shooter game, very arcadey in style of its gameplay. But you can see here some awesome artwork of Optimus with the fallen in the background. Come round to the back, and I have to say this in the Optimus voice. Like, I'd be offended if I didn't. One shall stand, one shall fall. Co-op mode. Team up with another player and take out waves of devastating foes in 8 unique arenas. Fight, drive, and shoot through intense arcade-style missions. A unique Transformers adventure developed exclusively for the PSP system. And we have some awesome artwork of Optimus duking it out with Devastator. I absolutely adore this movie's take on Devastator. I think it's such a monstrous looking design for him, but we'll talk more about the game. Because this game has 2 campaigns. You get to play as Autobots and Decepticons, so you can choose from like a team of different Autobots, say like Optimus, Ironhide, Sideswipe, Ratchet, Bumblebee. Then for Decepticons you have Starscream, Grindor, I think Megatron as well, Sideways, and Dead End. So pretty diverse roster of characters. You stretch out a bit. But this game in particular, I've had a lot of fond memories with, because I remember many a lunchtime in college, I would pass time just by playing this game, and my friends had their Switches and all out, and they were talking about the latest games, and here's me playing Transformers Revenge of the Fallen on the PSP. I'm like, I'm hip, I'm with it. But yeah, this game has a lot of special memories to me, and personally I feel like it's a game that definitely deserves the PSP Essentials tagline here, which has really nice honeycomb pattern. Or not even honeycomb, looks more like I don't know, a popcorn bucket. I don't know, I'm craving popcorn. I'm craving sweet treats tonight. So, we're coming up towards our final 4 games, so let's talk about God of War, Chains of Olympus. Now, God of War was a series that I had no interest in for the longest time. I knew it existed and I knew it had a big following, but I never played the games. And that changed whenever I decided to play God of War 2018. Within just a few hours, I fell in love with it. The story, the characters, the music, and I had to go back and see what the other games are about. And so I started with God of War 3, since that was the most popular one and the most beloved, and I became a fast fan of God of War from there on out. The brutality, the music, the story, the combat is, oh my goodness, the combat. And Kratos is just such a damn cool character. But you can see, there he is, looking at his trademark signature smile. Yeah, you're right. In the back of the box says, "In the beginning there was darkness. A great shadow covers the land. Helios, god of the sun, lies trapped in the underworld as chaos reigns. Only the cursed warrior, Kratos, slave to the gods of Olympus, can restore the light and escape the dire sins of his past." So this game takes place before the third one, and I think it's either after God of War 2 or after God of War 1, but it is canon to the overarching story. And this game in particular, I remember playing multiple times and doing a New Game Plus run of it. It is really fun, especially whenever you get your blades and all your kit upgraded, because over the course of the game, Kratos requires different equipment, like the Ifrit, which is this area of effect attack where it summons this hellfire demon that punches the ground, does an AoE attack. And then he has stuff like, I forget if it was the Medusa's head, or he gets like these gauntlets, but it's incredible. It really is. Just the amount of fun that I got from this game in particular. And I haven't played the Ghost of Sparta. I haven't played Ghost of Sparta as much as Chains of Olympus, but Chains of Olympus is one of those games that I just find really easy to replay. It's like one of those games that you can just hop in and, play it for a couple hours a day, and then, put it down, then play it again, or you could just do it all in one sitting. It's actually really fun. Like, I remember playing it for the first time. I mean, I sucked horribly at it, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time with this game, and I will definitely recommend it, as I do every other game in my collection. But this one's special. This is one of the games that everyone was touting, saying like this was one of the reasons to own a PSP besides the UMD feature. Alright, so why don't we diversify things with a racing game? Burnout Legends. Now, Burnout, I love this series. The fast paced racing game, which puts so much emphasis on the crashing aspect of it. Not only you crashing, but the brilliant crash mode. The fact that you can ram into your opponents, knock them off the road, and you get to see their car get destroyed in real time. And especially, oh, the beautiful crash mode. Just you and your car, drive as fast as you can into this slew of other cars. It was like, oh, it was like a big bowling alley. Just ram right into them and then rack it up, 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 the damage. And then eventually you'll have this massive wreck of buses, cars, trees, all manner of vehicles all just crushed together, and then it tallies up every single penny of the destruction you caused. It is superb. But let's turn around to the back of the box. Take the best of Burnout on the road. The greatest modes including the legendary Road Rage and Crash. The most aggressive and destructive racing experience on the PSP, PlayStation Portable. Could have confused it for Portable System Penniless. It was really dumb. Why'd I laugh at that? Pursuit Mode, a blistering game of cat and mouse. Game share with a friend for double destruction, and 6-player carnage through wireless play. This game in particular, I would definitely consider to be a great game to play on the road. Not to replicate on the road because, well, look at the front cover. I'd get into a lot of trouble if I condone that kind of behaviour. But Burnout Legends in particular is like a compilation of the best tracks and cars from the Burnout trilogy, like specifically 1, 2, and 3, and how it's able to take what worked so well with the original games and then compile it into this little celebratory game in a way. I mean, hence the name Legends. And I think it really earns that title because this game in particular has so much content. It is filled to bursting with things to do. You'll have all these different races. You have the crash mode especially, which is like its own separate game in a way. But I definitely say this is one of the best games in this collection so far. There's only 2 Burnout games on the PSP though, so it kind of sucks, but hey, quality over quantity. That's what I think. So, on to the last 2. We have Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories. Now, I was never big into Grand Theft Auto for the longest time until I played San Andreas on the PlayStation 2, and after that, I was hooked. I love the style of this series. It's very gritty, but it's also very funny. Like it's got a very strong sense of tongue-in-cheek humor as well as pop culture parodies. But this one in particular, I really enjoyed for the story. So come around to the bag. See, it's a platinum. Only the best-selling games qualify for platinum. Vice City, 1984. Opportunity abounds in a city emerging from the swamps. Its growth fueled by the violent power struggle and lucrative drugs trade. Construction is everywhere as a shining metropolis rises from the foundations of crime and betrayal. As a soldier, Vic Vance has always protected his dysfunctional family, his country, himself. One bad decision later, and that job is about to get much harder. Kicked out onto the streets of a city torn between glamour and gluttony, Vic is faced with a stark choice: build an empire or be crushed. So the story of this game has you play as Vic Vance, and he's a former soldier, as you heard there. And it's a really interesting story of a good man doing reprehensible things, like finding himself wrapped up and embroiled in a world of crime. And I feel like when Grand Theft Auto tells those kinds of stories, it really makes the characters more sympathetic. But it's not just the main character, it's all the other weird and wacky characters you meet in Grand Theft Auto games, like the sergeant I forget his name, but he was watching stuff on the TV and he was snorting drugs and all while he was supposed to be his commanding officer. So it gets you. It definitely shows you what kind of world these folks are living in. Not the most morally correct. But I loved driving around the open world, like getting like in Grand Theft Auto. The best thing to do is just get a tank or get a military vehicle, gather up a bunch of equipment, grenades, shotguns, all different kinds of weapons, and then just going on a goddamn rampage, like just reenacting the Killdozer rampage, but in Grand Theft Auto, or better yet, the meth tank rampage. But yeah, this game's a platinum seller, and for good reason. It is a great game, and the same goes for the final game of this video, Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories. Now, I haven't played this game as much as Vice City Stories, but I really like the Godfather style story and art style that this one goes for, especially considering the sort of main motif of the plot, which we come round to the back. There are a million stories in Liberty City. This one changes everything. Once a trusted wise guy in the Leone crime family, Tony Soprani was forced into hiding after killing a made man. Now he's back, and it's time for things to be put right. Now, if I remember correctly, Tony Soprani, he was the protagonist of Grand Theft Auto 3, but I haven't played that game, so I could be wrong. Feel free to correct me. The streets of Liberty City are in turmoil. Warring mafioso vie for control as the town begins to self-destruct under waves of political corruption, organised crime, drug trafficking, and union strikes. No one can be trusted as Tony tries to clean up the mess of the city's chaotic underworld. Deranged hitmen, morally depraved tycoons, cynical politicians, and his own mother stand in his way as Tony tries to bring the city under Leone control. Forced to fight for his life in an odyssey that will shake Liberty City to its foundations, Tony must use any means necessary to secure his place in the leadership of the Leone family in a town up for grabs. So I played a good wee bit of this game to the point where I really started to get attached to the characters and the story that it told, because these games, while smaller in scale by being handhelds and or handheld Grand Theft Auto games, they still keep the core gameplay loop of Grand Theft Auto intact, and the fun of exploring the open world, driving your cars, like shooting people, committing crimes. You know, it keeps all the core aspects of what makes the Grand Theft Auto games fun. And this one in particular, I feel like these two games, these two Grand Theft Auto games, they're better than the Chinatown Wars game, but the Chinatown Wars game is still good. Still a fun little game in its own right. But with that being said, that is the end of my PSP top 10 or 10 PSP game ramble video. I hope you enjoyed. It was something a little bit different. I figured, why not take a little break from Transformers for tonight and maybe do another little video to see how you like it. Because I want to do gaming content on this channel as well. Maybe like proper Let's Plays down the line whenever I get the best recording set up for it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. This is Orobot ASMR, signing off. Freedom is the right of all sentient beings. Good night, and sleep well.